Today at the National Press Club, leading wildlife scientist Dr. Vanessa Pirotta. Dr. Pirotta is known for blending cutting-edge technology with bold conservation science. She'll advocate for greater education and investment in the field. Dr. Vanessa Pirotta with today's National Press Club address.
Hello and welcome to the National Press Club of Australia and today's Westpac address. My name is Julie Hare. I'm the Education Editor at the Australian Financial Review and a Director here at the club. Welcome to the program because we have a cracker of a speaker today. Let's get excited. Our guest is Dr. Vanessa Pirotta. She's an Australian wildlife scientist, science communicator and author. Her research uses innovative technologies like drones and AI for wildlife conservation. She grew up in Canberra, so she must have missed the ocean as a child growing up, since that's where her career is. So we will opportunistically claim her as one of those rare finds that have come out of Canberra. I think there's been a few, actually. You might remember the film Free Willy. I appreciate that this is going to age some people in the audience watching today, but it was crucial in igniting Vanessa's passion in learning more about whales and the ocean. From using drones to connect, this is true, from using drones to collect whale snot, yes, that's right, whale snot, and Vanessa did just mention that whales also fart, you know where we're heading on this one, to developing AI tools to combat illegal wildlife trafficking. Her work pushes the boundaries of how we understand and protect the natural world. She's been called a whale whisperer, which is a nice thing to be called, and she is the 2025 Celestino Eureka Prize winner for promoting the understanding of science, the New South Wales 2025 Young Poppy of the Year, and she's founder of citizen science programs linking everyday Australians with scientists to better understand the environment. Last year she wrote the bestseller called Humpback Highway. She's here to talk about Australia's scientific future. She might even slip in a reference in the challenging task of collecting, you guessed it, whale snot. Anyway, I have been instructed that I have today give us very special welcome and a big hi out there to Big Ted and Jemima, who are with us today, I am told. Oh, there. Hello. Now, please join me and welcome Dr. Vanessa Pirotta to the stadium. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'd like to start by acknowledging the Ngunnawal people as the traditional owners on which the land in which we gather here today and which I'm presenting to you right there at home. I'd like to pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. And if we think of those words, past, present and emerging, that's exactly what I'll be talking about today in my talk. I'd also like to acknowledge that we have saltwater people in this room with representatives from the Dharawal Bidjigal country, from Sydney via the Gamay Ranges. You may have realised now that I'm standing here and I'm not a politician, I'm not a business person, I'm not a sports person, but don't switch off. I'm a scientist. Not just any scientist, I call myself a wildlife scientist, but primarily I'm a, ready for this, whale scientist. And I'm leaving Winston here so that anyone watching on at home will flick on their TV and wonder why there's a whale at the National Press Club of Australia. The first press club was held back over 60 years ago. That means for 60 years we have been in this room, or a similar place, talking and sharing ideas, sharing knowledge and inspiration. And when I thought about that, that's exactly what we do as scientists. We share knowledge. We're just like you, except sometimes we're a bit dorky, and that's okay. What I'm about to talk to you all today is something incredibly important to every single person here in Australia, and especially to the ex-Darra-Marlin, I was ex-Darra-Marlin, Darra-Marlin students and Year 12 students, Year 11 and 12 students that are in this room. And I know beyond this room, you will be listening to this talk, be it driving your car, or perhaps you're having lunch, or if you're homeschooling, you might be taking a break, or maybe you're studying for your HSC. You're allowed to have a break. Or maybe you're listening to this talk maybe 20 years in time. The main point of what I've explained here is that the way in which we digest information is an example of science and technology, and we can all be very grateful and proud of that. Today, I will share with you my scientific journey as an example of hope when there's times of challenge. And mine is just one example of many who faces challenges as an Australian scientist in the world today. In fact, not far away, 45 minutes down the road, down the Barton Highway, away from this very lectern in which I stand, I grew up on a farm in Murray Bateman, where I was surrounded by my pet cow, Zach, deer, my dad's in the room, so Dad's very proud, and also ferrets. And I recall as a really young child watching one of the coolest shows on earth, the longest Australian running children's show, Play School. And Play School, like many of you would have experienced, has been cross-generational and incredibly important in building the foundations of the education that we are all very privileged to have right here in Australia. But all I ever wanted to be when I grew up was a dolphin trainer. And I recall hopping on the bus, the bush bus back then, because Murray Bateman was out there and now it's not, and going home, having a bowl of cereal where I'd sit down to Australian-produced TV content, totally wild, where Ranger Stacey would be on the screen. And I got to meet Ranger Stacey a few weeks ago. Hello, Ranger Stacey. And then after Totally Wild, naturally I'd transition into The Bold and the Beautiful to keep up to date with my nunna, my Maltese grandma. In fact, like many Australians, I grew up in a culturally diverse family. My family have immigrated post-war from Italy and Malta. My dad was born in Malta and my nunna came here to work on the Snowy Hydro. In fact, the walls around the lodge, my dad, yes, he's over there, helped build that with his dad. And my nonna and nonno, they came here in Australia. And I'd also just like to take the opportunity to acknowledge representatives from the Italian Embassy, Peru as well, by the way, which I'm not Bolivian or anything like that, and the Maltese Embassy here in Australia, and also the French. Thank you for being here. So I'd like to say grazie tante, grazie hafna, and merci beaucoup, if I'm okay with that. I grew up in a family of hardworking people. There were no academics in my family. And this doesn't mean my family weren't smart. In fact, they're incredibly smart. It's just that their path was different. And like many of you who have lived experiences, we all know that going to university is not the only way to be successful in life. From an early age, I knew I loved the marine environment. I mean, come on. You could say I was also in love with the visual component of learning, which we now call, well, science as well, but we now call STEAM. Don't freak out. I'm going to explain what that is. Science, technology, engineering, art, and math. And I really like to put STEAM, the A in the STEM, because so much of what we do as a scientist is visual. And about the math component, well, I was not very good at math and I still aren't, so please don't tell the treasurer I'm not that good at maths. But I remember I was surrounded by fabulous teachers. In fact, right in this room today, my primary school librarian, Mrs. Vincent, sits over there next to my sister. And I was her proud library monitor. And she was great because she always had fabulous books in the library for me to read. And this is an important thing when growing up. When I told my late mother, Rosa Pirotta, who is a prominent Canberran, and many of you in this room will probably know her, that I wanted to study marine biology and become a marine biologist, her words to me were, "Are you sure you want to become a marine biologist? There's not much money in that." And she was right. My scientific journey here in Australia has not been a straightforward path. Year 11 and 12 students, I'm looking at you. The path to doing what I've done and continue to do has not been like this. It's been like this, and that's okay. That's okay to know. In fact, it's probably been the same for many of us in this room. After school, I took a gap year in England at Windsor Castle, where a lot of people are right now in the world, with the Queen as well. And yes, I got to see the Queen horse riding on a Monday at 11 o'clock. I did, and she never wore a helmet. After that, I returned back to Canberra to work at the National Zoo and Aquarium, which we have representatives from here today, while I studied at ANU, which we also have representatives from, where I did a Bachelor of Science, Zoology, and it focused on zoology, evolution and ecology. I thought I had to go to Queensland to study marine science, but it just worked out that I provided myself with a buffet of science skills. See what I'm saying, students? Yeah. Now, my childhood dream was realised when I had the opportunity to become a dolphin trainer in Coffs Harbour. Something I also have in common with WA politician Sam Lim, who was also a former dolphin trainer. So a big hello. I won't positively reinforce you for watching. I also went to TAFE while being a dolphin trainer, where I gained husbandry skills, but also an industry certification. And I'd like to take this national opportunity to say a big shout out to all those teachers and students at TAFE. And TAFE is so important in skilling this very nation. So thank you so much for all that you do. After the sudden passing of my mother, I returned to Canberra to become a public servant in the now DQ, which is the Department of Climate Change, Energy, the Environment and Water. The acronyms just kill me. Back then it was called DSOPAC. We're not going to go into that. And this was a wonderful opportunity for me to really understand how important it is of what public servants do here in Canberra for our nation. Incredibly important. And now as a scientist and a whale scientist, I liaise a lot with those who care for whales, so a big shout out to you as well, you know who you are. At the time, I was an environmental assessment officer in the Ports and Marine section. So it was a great combination of both policy, the ocean, and then really linking into maybe what I wanted to do when I grew up. Remember, all I wanted to do was become a dolphin trainer, and then I got there and life turned in a different way, and that's okay. After 6 months of emailing my now friend and colleague, Professor Rob Harcourt, I finally landed a job as a research assistant working on a very cool whale project looking at trying to prevent whale entanglement in fishing gear. And any of you who know, you may have seen me on TV talking about whale disentanglements and our efforts to try and stop this. For this research project, I was looking at the use of acoustic alarms, which was a little device placed on gear so that whales could beep, acoustically beep, hear their sound. But unfortunately, Winston didn't really care because the ocean is loud, everyone. This led to me completing my master's and PhD at Macquarie University, where I'm now based. But in fact, most of you probably know me from one particular part of my PhD, and you really came on in with this because it's the juicy bit. The development of world-first flip-lid drones that collect whale snot, an assessment of whale health information without having to physically touch a whale. Because I don't know about you, but you can't get a 17-metre whale to present its flipper for a blood test. You just can't. And this was really my platform, my entry point into being accessible and just sharing science. And back then, the science communication existed, but there really wasn't this thing of, oh, you're a science communicator. No, I was a scientist, and I still am a scientist, but I share my science. So I'm a scientist, but I also communicate science. And a big thank you to those wonderful science communicators and the science team here that are really championing right now through social media as well what I'm talking about. An important part of what I was doing when sharing my science was going to international conferences and presenting my work as a proud Australian scientist. I was proud. I was really proud to say about the wonderful things I was doing to help protect our animals that are a part of our national policy and the Environmental Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act. I was really proud. I finished my PhD and then it began. Ironically, what I felt when I finished my PhD was like being dropped into the deepest part of the ocean. I was told by many to go overseas, despite having just finished a PhD. I was even offered a postdoctoral position in Canada, helping learn more about the critically endangered North Atlantic right whale. Google them, kids. They really need our help. I was 30, qualified, and lost. I felt like I had given everything to the science world, and all I wanted to do was to stay here and have kids. But I couldn't find a job in academia. I was low. The lowest point came for me when I tried to get a job in a retail store, a pet store. I took my PhD off, I took my master's off, I dequalified myself. And despite having worked in a zoo and been a dolphin trainer, I couldn't even cut it in a retail pet shop store. They didn't even call me for an interview, nothing. And I'm not going to say the vet store as well. I'm sure people are juicy trying to work it out. Maybe there's a cool collaboration in the future, everyone. Not many people know this, but unfortunately, I was extremely depressed. And this is me opening up to the nation, all in the name of science. How could a system that I poured so much into let me down like this, let me feeling like this? I'm now 6 years post-PhD, a mother of 2 beautiful calves. They're being looked after, hi Lou, if they're watching. And I'm leading both national and international research projects, both in the marine environment, in areas such as the Kingdom of Tonga, and also here in Australia. And as a side hustle to help me put food on the table, I'm also a chief scientist for the last 5 years, working on an illegal wildlife trafficking detection program, because people unfortunately take wildlife, put them in their bags or mail and smuggle them overseas. And collaboratively with the federal government, as well as Rapiscan Systems and the Taronga Conservation Society Australia, aka Taronga Zoo, we are working towards, well, we've built world-first algorithms for the detection of illegal wildlife trafficking, and we've got so much more to share. But most people don't realise, despite doing all this, I am yet to hold a permanent job in academia. I don't have a permanent job in academia. And unfortunately, this is normal for science. In fact, a remarkable number of young people who are working in science and technology right here in Australia are working in that position without earning a living wage. And many of those people are young scientists and mothers. So juggling putting out papers and being a mother is extremely one of the hardest things I've had to do in life. We've all seen the headlines in recent months of job cuts across universities, about the funding crisis, but the reality is it's not about bad budgets. It's about long-term structural problems, and we've seen how universities and how this has changed across the research ecosystems. And I know this is a bit serious right now, but we've got to be there. Don't worry, I'm going to lift you up. Australia ranks near the bottom of the OECD nations for public sector support for universities. The latest public figures from 2021 show that our government spends just 0.64% of GDP on tertiary education. Tertiary education, for those at home, being university and onwards. And this is unfortunately low compared to the OECD average of 0.96%. The gap between Australia's public tertiary funding relative to GDP and the OECD average has nearly tripled since 2012. Meanwhile, international student fees now account for 1/4 of our university sector income. It's quite a lot. And this is making up for our stagnant or declining public funding. And this makes the research system that we have here really vulnerable. Despite the public funding situation, young Australians still value their education. And this is really good. And in fact, they will put themselves in debt in order to pursue it. We have around 66% of women and 49% of men aged between 25 and 34 holding tertiary qualifications. And this is high for OECD standards. In fact, I only have just recently, well, in my mid-30s, finished paying off my HECS debt from ANU, and that's despite having a proper academic position. So it can be done. Around 10,000 people graduate with PhDs from Australia, and more than half of those are in science and engineering. So that's really good. I mean, obviously I'm biased towards science and engineering, but it's really good. But only a small fraction will go on to ongoing paid positions. And a 2023 Nature report found that around 30 to 40% of early career researchers that go overseas, many don't return. And this is an example of a brain drain. Meanwhile, Australia's research system has become structurally dependent on what I can only refer to as a constant influx of disposable PhDs And this is because they're incentivised. So universities it's a favourable thing to have a lot of academics come out of an institution. And that is also great from a PR perspective, because the more research you do, the more representing you're doing for your university. So I never thought of it like that, but it's awesome. And I must also point out that PhD students are very cost effective as well, because they can do fabulous research at half the price of a full salaried person. So yes, I think it was the $8 or so an hour I was earning as a PhD student. That kind of is a little bit more economic compared to someone with a full salary. This isn't sustainable, and unfortunately, it's not fair. My work as a scientist is 85% unpaid, but I love what I do because I have such passion and I want to keep doing it. For example, one of my projects is the commencement of in the Kingdom of Tonga, the Tongan Whale Tourism Project, which is to ensure the sustainability and longevity of whale swim tourism in one of the islands called Vavau. And this is in direct collaboration with the Kingdom of Tongan government and locals there, local communities. I want to see Tongan whale scientists manage their resources there. But I also want to make sure that Australia is helping our Pacific partners to share the protection of an animal that doesn't see a country, that doesn't see an international border, that go where they want when. Despite all this uncertainty, I also have the opportunity to work with some of the most fabulous people in Australia. Citizen scientists, non-scientists going about and collecting information for the scientific world. And a massive shout out to Wayne Reynolds, who has collected over 20 years worth of whale data. He's in the TV world at the moment, or probably on a boat. And he has literally documented the recovery of the East Coast humpback whale population. But this optimism that I'm presenting, or at least the work that I do, we can't rely on this as Australia. We can't rely on people like me to be working the majority of the time for free, raising kids, making sure that there's food on the table and going forward. We need urgent reform and a rebalancing towards grant capacity building rather than the Hunger Games style funding situation. But fortunately, we now have, and this is going to come into full swing next year, a National Tertiary Education Commission to provide oversight and strategic direction. Now that's really good, and I am honoured that that exists. So as a former dolphin trainer, you'd get a fish for that. Most importantly, we need to reset how Australia views science. That's right, each and every one of us in this room, those watching on at home or listening in the car, it's probably science that's driving you right now. We need to show our scientists that we value them and that we appreciate them by providing them with good, secure jobs, which reduces our dependency from funding of international students, but also the private sector for funding. The talent is here, and the discoveries are ready to be made. But we're wasting extraordinary time because we're not investing properly in our people. And our people drives innovation and findings and represents us on the world stage incredibly well. You could say that every single scientist is a great way of Australian PR, if you're a PR person, public relations. I should define every acronym that I say if I was a good scientist. Australia, I stand here having shared my story with every one of you. I want you to know that I'm not bitter, I'm not angry, I'm not frustrated, maybe a little frustrated, but I'm really optimistic. I mean, what's wonderful is that we are here talking about science, which we should be every single National Press Club address. Can we put that in there? But we should be talking about science every day because we are living with science every single day, from the moment you've grown up to the environment that we are all vulnerable to. And especially as a whale scientist, there is nothing you can do about a bad sea day. There are highs and literally lows. So today, I want to provide Australia with 3 core areas on how we can stop Australia's brain drain and we can reignite Australia's curiosity with science and the world around us, which is so important. So these 3 pillars, not killer whale, cover education, science communication and investment in science. So economists, just hold on, we're getting there. For those listening on at home, you need to make sure that you write down, or you could view the transcript after. But this is where I really want to hit home with what I talk about today. I may never be invited back again, I don't know. But hey, this is what I'm going to say. So let's give this a go. The first pillar is education, and it's a really exciting one. We need to make sure that we foster good STEAM education from foundation levels up to our highest. STEAM, again, that acronym, science, technology, engineering, art, math. You've heard of STEM. I'm really banging on about the fact we need STEAM. Arts is a huge component of what we do in science. We need that. I'm also talking about from the foundation to those people who enable those young ones to learn. The parents, the guardians, the grandparents, the teachers. On behalf of all the scientists, and now as a mum, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank every single teacher in Australia, because you have done amazing things. And it's incredibly important that our teachers are part of the world in which we grow up in, because they need to feel empowered to teach our next generation. And also, seeing as Mrs. Vincent's here, my primary school librarian, my third children's book is well underway, and it's a dedication to you. Oh, don't make me cry. And when I write my children's books, there's always a back section which is there for the reader, so that when the listener asks questions, they can be empowered. Just like when we watch Play School. And speaking of the topic of Play School, I'd just like to give a massive shout out to two people sitting back there, Big Ted and Jemima, who have travelled all the way from Ultimo today to be here. Thank you so much, because we all know Jemima, sorry Big Ted, but let's just give Jemima some love here. We all know Jemima, but I'd like to know Jemima now as a woman in STEM, or STEAM rather. And Play School is incredibly important in setting that foundation, because as a mother, well, I've been fortunate to be on Play School twice. Why don't whales need to wear coats? It's now on the recent Science Time episode, and so is Winston. But it's a really important way for us as adults to learn. So here's my ask. Ready? Science understanding and our science literacy needs to start at the youngest years. As a scientist, and now as a mother, it is crucial that we explore STEAM subjects, environmental subjects from the ground up, so that we can reconnect those who may have not connected with science when they were growing up to be connected together. And as part of this, we need to remember, here's some stats, get excited, 58% of Year 6 students are at or above the proficient standards in science literacy, meaning 42% are falling behind. And the performance gap between the highest and the lowest socioeconomic groups exceeds 15 percentage points. So this is why I'm calling on Australia to strengthen its commitment to producing really amazing, strong foundational education for our youngest, the foundation years. And that's why platforms like Play School, which is on the ABC, is freely accessible, but I know, because I've been on Play School, is incredibly researched and well thought out and explores a number of different topics that I bet many of the people watching are learning through. So thank you, Big Ted and Jemima, because we need more of that. We also need to make sure, in addition to strengthening our capabilities here in Australia, we also need to go back to producing Australian-based content. Only a few years ago, when the removal of the Australian quotas for producing children's television was cut, I was mortified. I know the internet wasn't there when I was growing up, and I'm not that old, Year 12 students, but we would learn through so much. In fact, all of you probably would have had experience with Play School. We need to make sure that we not only increase the visibility of STEAM, but the visibility of scientists, and also the visibility of culturally diverse people and neurodiverse people. In fact, one of the coolest people I know is in this very room here today. The very famous actor Michael Theo, over here next to Big Ted and Jemima. And Michael is one of, let's give Michael a round of applause. I am honoured to call Michael a really great friend, because what Michael does is bring authenticity and curiosity. And Michael and I met on his podcast, Mr. Area Plus, where we both discovered we had a love of animals. And so together, Michael and I are actively working to produce well-produced, thought out and researched content about the world around us, produced from here in Australia and around the world. Now, we can do this. We've got Bluey, we export that around the world. Why don't we provide more investment to producing Australian content right here for our earliest years, which secretly go to the oldest years, and to really strengthen our ability to communicate the foundation levels of science, technology, engineering, art and STEAM. So ping Australian Government, ping Screen Australia, Australian Children's TV Foundation, and also to the streamers. We've got really great talent here in Australia. Let's explore that and produce good Australian content. So when I turn on ABC Kids, I don't hear Deadly 60, which I love Steve Backshaw, but I went to Steve's producer and I said, we need a female version of Deadly 60. Because the other point of what I want to make with this ask is ensuring that our schools are equipped with good STEAM-based literacy, books, where students can see that scientists don't all look the same. We look different, and really empowering, and I can say this, women in science. Because a lot of my women science friends do cool things. Some of them catch sharks, track turtles, fight wildlife crime, and hang out with Jane Goodall, that's you, Zara. And we drive boats. Yes, we drive boats. It's not just a male thing. Surprise, surprise. The second pillar is science communication. We need to reset how Australia views its connection with science so that cross-generationally we can all be more connected and then aware. We are all consumers of science, whether you think it or not. Did you check the weather today, anyone? Some people may have. Some people might have looked outside. What about the forecast in the next 50 or so years, which we spoke about earlier this year with the climate? All of that, I'm just going to let you in a secret, is based on science. So you are a consumer of science. You just might not think it. That's why nationally right here, I'm here to present with you, to tell you that you're a consumer of science. And that's okay. It doesn't have to be scary. And now here's my ask. Listening up. Australian media. I ask that you actively cover more science stories, not just light and fluffy ones, but really in-depth science, so that we can learn about how the processes of studying whales, for example, and not just whales, but other things. It's not an easy thing to become a scientist. And when we see documentaries produced, it kind of fluffs over it at times. The other component is we need to make sure that scientists are accessible. So I'm calling on all of you scientists. You need to be accessible. And I'm not saying you need to stand up here and do a press club address. What you need to do is be accessible in ways that the media can connect with you, and to be accessible to parliamentarians. The Science and Technology Australia program of Superstars of STEM, which I'm proud to be a part of, and now a mentor, and I have my mentors as well, is phenomenal in helping us as scientists connect with parliamentarians. They're not that scary, and that's a great thing. And as well as this, it's also important to note that we are vulnerable sometimes when talking in front of the media, and I'm just going to provide you a few examples before I wrap up. When en route to the Kingdom of Tonga this year, I provided a live ABC TV interview in my Fiji hotel room. I didn't have to, but I did, because we needed to know about this new research. It was whale research, killer whale research. I soon received an email. It's short, don't worry, but it's really juicy. Hi, I just watched your ABC TV news. I just watched you on ABC TV News. An interesting story on whale research. That's a positive. But honestly, your performance was too animated for news TV. More suited to a class of Year 7-year-olds. I like your enthusiasm, but we already have Dr. Carl and don't really need another one. Regards, Andy. Dr. Carl is a national treasure, but we need more Dr. Carlas. We need a whole army of Dr. Carls and Dr. Carlas, okay? And we need more astrophysicists, more astronomers, more frog scientists, more neuroscientists. Whatever scientist you are, we need more of you. So it's here that I ask that you be accessible. We've also been well served by the three nonagenarians, environmental luminaries, David Attenborough, Dr. Sylvia Earle, and Dr. Jane Goodall. They've done a fabulous job and served us well, but they are not going to be around for very long. We need new voices. And I'm sure they would also say we need new voices as well. And the final pillar is investment in science. Get excited, economists. And I'm noting the time. I didn't realise I've taken a bit extra time. The previous two pillars, science and foundation at the earliest years, and the second being science communication, has set us up for the next pillar, which is investment in science. And this is deliberately done so we as a nation can be well informed together to make good science investments. In fact, the more you invest in science, the higher Australia's GDP will be. We only heard this last year from a National Press Club by Science and Technology Australia, which is talking about just that. And now here's my ask. I'm not standing here to ask for funding for my marine research. I don't want your money. I've watched multiple press clubs where people have stood up here and talked about the need for R&D. Great, we actually do need that. But what we've forgotten about is who's going to make good of the R&D? Who is going to sit in the seats and warm them to make good of that investment? Who is going to make good of the investment that we produce in this fabulous country? The future looks bright, and people like Aidan, who I met at the Australian Museum Eureka Prizes, who was a Sleek Geeks Prize finalist for his Talking Trees, who came up to me for a selfie afterwards. Hello, Aidan. I didn't tell him I was doing that. I asked this country that we rethink our investment in science with people first, so we as scientists can go into the jobs that can be long-term and secure, so that we can think about investing in a house. You know what that is? And have children. Do you know what they are? That is incredibly important. And now we've reached the tail end of my talk. In my children's book, The Voyage of Whale and Calf, I document the birth of a calf and the year in which the humpback whale spends with its mum. The mother is there with the calf for about a year or so, the entire journey. The mother guides him, teaches him, and protects him. This is what we need for Australian science. We need to be the ocean that nurtures our young generations of scientists, not the deep that drowns them. The humpback whales that migrate along the east and west coast of Australia were once nearly hunted to extinction, but fortunately, due to good conservation and protection, the numbers have rebounded beyond our wildest dreams. In fact, thanks to Dr. Lyndon Brooks and Dr. Wally Franklin, our East Coast population has only recently been revised as estimates at around 50,000 individuals. There's another grab media. That's actually a new finding. But our voyage continues. And so our young scientists are ready to embark. And the question is, will we as Australia be there to help lift them up or to be the barrier that holds them back? I believe in Australia, an Australia that chooses to lift them up. And if my mother, Rosa Pirotta, was here to watch this press club, I'd say that she'd be overwhelmed that her very enthusiastic child became that marine biologist and the dolphin trainer and continues to be so, but has become a voice for so many in this country who are navigating such a tricky time in the STEAM sector. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I have so many questions. I'm just going to have to hold back a bit. Now, then, talking about long-term and secure careers, dolphin training, not exactly a long-term or secure career, but how did you learn to be a dolphin trainer? Like, is there a Certificate 3 in dolphin training at Coffs Harbour TAFE? And who were you dolphin training for?
Okay, so the movie Free Willy, which swoops right back to what you said at the start, I always grew up thinking that being a dolphin trainer was the best and everything, but in my opinion, it's not. I mean, we still have to look after the animals that we have in an environment. But dolphin training opens up amazing on-the-job skills. And like I said, I went to TAFE during that time, and many of the skill sets that I acquired from there is transferable to the National Zoo and Aquarium, which I became. It was from that platform that I was able to get that job. And then being a dolphin trainer has really helped science really incredibly importantly, because what we do as a dolphin trainer and a sea lion trainer is have these animals working close with them, and we can do research on them. So it goes beyond just asking an animal to vocalise or chuff sample to collect whale snot. I scared some of you there. And so it's really important, but also the Australian sea lion is a really endangered species, and some of the animals that we have looking after at facilities here is going to be really important in help safeguarding a population that we will hopefully have for years to come for our next generation here in the room.
Okay, so next question, what does whale snot reveal about the health of a whale?
Whale snot reveals a whole heap of biological information from their lung bacteria. Remember a PCR test, when you got shoved? Before I did my research before COVID hit, so we didn't really know what that was. But it really explains the biology of what's going on in their lungs. So I was looking at some of the smallest taxa from one of the biggest animals on Earth. bacteria, and so we were trying to get a baseline of representative information of what we're likely to find in there. And then in another world first, not only was my team and I able to collect dolphin snot, but we also were able to collect viruses from whales which directly link these animals to areas like Antarctica. So while you might think, oh, it's just a whale, these animals are incredibly representative of a changing environment, and by studying them can help us learn more about how that environment is changing.
Okay. Before we get to Simon, just one more question, Simon, please be patient. As parliamentarians up on the Hill are still arguing about net zero, unbelievably, in 2025, I'd just like to ask you about the state of our oceans. So we've got warming, we've got acidification, we've got sea level rise, plastic pollution, chemical runoff, overfishing, habitat loss, deep sea mining, and so on and so forth. Is there any point of optimism?
You also forgot to mention acoustics.
Yeah.
Whoop, whoop, whoop. That's the sound of a ship or a small vessel. If you have a jet ski, it's like a it's awful. And so I think you should be optimistic. And the reason I'm telling you this is because last week I just spent a whole entire week looking at a calving ground of southern right whales with Professor Harcourt in Western Australia. And it was an amazing thing to see. The mothers with their calves. Despite all this awful, terrible things of what we know is going on, these animals still persist. And that's really important. So we need to be mindful that while we might be going, oh, I can't do everything, the world, doom and gloom, that's it, shut the book, give up. No. My gosh, I have 2 children now. It's incredible, incredibly important. The way I look at whales and their calves now has changed. I am so much more connected, and I ask different questions as well as a scientist and now as a mother, which I feel has strengthened my capabilities as a scientist personally. Okay. So parliamentarians, don't give up. Connect with scientists, and we can be there to be your expertise. We're not necessarily asking for anything, but we can be there.
Okay, thank you. Our first question is from Simon Gross, Canberra IQ.
Thank you for your enthusiastic and positive presentation. I'm going to be a bit dour and drag you back to some reality. The kids don't care about STEM. This is from the Australian Mathematical Sciences Institute and the Institute of Physics. Between 2015 and 2023, Year 12 physics participation declined from 14.9% to 12.1%. And the other chronic gender difference is still there. Universities have given up requiring maths as a qualification for doing STEM courses. So we're dumbing down. And the generations these kids coming through are dumbing down compared to what went before. What do you say to that?
Look, that's a really good question. I don't think that's a negative thing. Let me explain. Okay. Don't judge me, right? Wait. I've got an answer for you.
Go for it.
Look, I think it's all in the way things are interpreted. You could read that, right? And you've had a take on it. What I hear about when you read those words was people that might be feeling lost in the system. And I know you're going, what the hell is she talking about? But who are teaching these children? The teachers, right? The curriculum. When I write a book, I write it as per the Australian curriculum so it can be directly embedded into the school classroom. What is going on for these students to feel like this, right? That's my first thought. Are we having teachers who are empowered to teach these students enough so they give a hoot? I said that I really didn't like math. I really didn't. But when I wanted to work on whales, I made sure I came to work with some of the guys that my dad works with to learn what a theodolite is. You know the theodolite, those things that where you look like you're about to be booked by a cop. It's a thing that does a triangulation, which works out the position of where I am, a reference object, and then a whale is. Maybe it's time we reset how we teach these subjects, or reset how our connection to sharing this information and showing what these children can be, if they at least give it a go. I really want our next generation to have that gusto, to not give up on anything, but to really go forward and have the challenges that was presented for you, for the previous generations before you, and what I had to struggle with. I mean, I grew up in Murrumbateman on a farm. I became a scientist, but that was through pure hard work. I don't think that as well is doom and gloom. I think that there is work, and this is great, this is work to do, and this is great that we're discussing this here. So maybe the question is, how can we improve how kids view maths, right? And also your comment about, I don't believe they're interested in STEAM or STEM. No. Gosh, they probably love, there's so many things that they love and they don't realise they're a consumer of it. So that's why I want to produce good, homegrown Australian content so we can zip-zap that, so we can all learn together, the younger generations, but also the teachers, the guardians, the grandparents who can throw something on, like Bluey, and hey, learn something. Although there was a humpback whale episode in Bluey and it was pretty good. I thought it was good, but there's so much more we can add to that.
I think you're being a bit unfair on science teachers.
No, I love science teachers.
I've gone to a lot of Prime Minister's Science Awards.
I hosted them for the last 2 years.
And the science teaching, the people who win those awards, they're just they're examples of really good teachers out there. So, but what you were just saying was just kind of doubting all that's going on in schools.
No, I know there are schools right here behind you. And there is so many, there's people watching on at home, and the students have the HSC in the next few weeks. I'm mentoring many students. I've got a student I'm mentoring right here to my left.
Yeah.
But I'm very positive about it, and I've got absolutely, in fact, during my talk, I thanked our teachers. We need to work together in a really positive way going forward. When people run over whales, do you think I'm going to get angry at the boaters who do that, or the shipping industry that makes it happen? No. The first thing I'm going to do is work with them to try and understand why this happens and how we can use science to help find ways around that. So it's not about working against each other, it's about working together. And I'd actually like to have a chat with you after this, if you like.
I have to go, but
okay.
Happy to do that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next question is Emma McGrath. Emma, from the AFR.
Hi Vanessa, thank you for your talk today. It was really interesting. The government recently released the National Climate Risk Assessment by the Australian Climate Service. It details quite a few concerning risks that are facing the country, but still quite a few people doubt that science that underlies that report. I was wondering whether you have any recommendations for your colleagues in the kind of climate science community about how they can best actually explain the science that's going on there.
Well, first, thank you for your question. First of all, I think it's great that we had climate change as one of the first big stories here in Australia this week. So that's wonderful. And then with some of the doubters, that's science, because in science, when we're told something, we are also trained not to accept that, for example, the lectern I'm standing on is black. Is it black? I mean, these are the kind of things we're taught in the science world. To have a little bit of that question around how do these numbers come around, that's, in my opinion, I believe that that would be quite natural. But if we have scientists sharing this information, this is where I call upon those pillars that I discussed. The media, connecting with maybe some of those scientists who are a part of that report. And can I just point out that this is scientists predicting what our future may be like if we have increased levels of warming, such as the difference between 2 degrees and 3 degrees, and looking at some of the people and areas on Earth that might, or around Australia rather, that might be most affected by climate change, so that we can take action now. And so going to those scientists, and then scientists who are part of that, being accessible in ways that maybe you wouldn't have thought possible is a really good way to kind of dissect it. And I'm sure people might be having that open right now, looking at it. And when you're presented with something like that, it's kind of overwhelming. And that's okay, that's normal to feel overwhelmed, but we need to have that optimism. We need to go, okay, they're not here to kind of point the finger and be that person to say, oh, we've got a doom and gloom, let's just give up now, let's just keep buying the cars that we want to. No, we can use this in ways that can constructively enable those scientists who have been part of this to have their voice as well and to be heard, but then also maybe have people who might not agree with them as well to maybe also be voiced, and that's a balanced view, and that's also science again. So yeah, thank you. And how good is it that we're talking about climate change right here on a national level?
Next question, Corrie McLeod, Director of the NPC, and...
From innovationals.com. Thank you so much for your address. I've actually outsourced my question to my 10-year-old daughter at home, who'd like to be a marine biologist and is very passionate about orcas.
Oh, killer whales. Mm-hmm.
Yes, killer whales. So Erin would like to know, do you study them as well? Have you studied their snot, and how far north do they migrate?
Oh my gosh, this is so great. So killer whales are actually the largest dolphin. So sorry, they're not a whale. And we have a lot of different types of killer whales around Australia. Bremer Bay is a great one, and there's some great researchers doing great work down there. John Trotterdell and Dr. Beck Wellard, they're doing fantastic work in the area. You may have seen their recent ABC doco. Mm-hmm. We need a humpback whale doco too. But there are different ecotypes of killer whales around the world. Some killer whales will feed specifically on Chinook salmon, and they're the southern resident killer whales, and they're not doing too well because they're such specialists in what they eat. That's kind of like you eating only caviar and going, yeah, I don't eat anything else but caviar, bring it on. Where's the beluga? And then there are some killer whales that are very generalists, and they might eat a seal here or a humpback whale. There are some humpback whales that their calves get escorted away by killer whales. Anyway, we won't get into that, but they are found all around the world. They're what we call a cosmopolitan species. I have never collected killer whale snot. It has been collected in captivity, and also I have my first whale watching trip was after a day working at the National Zoo and Aquarium. I was walking past the lions on my tour, and this bird pooed on me, and I went, oh, I hope I see killer whales. I hope I see killer whales tomorrow. And the next day, I actually saw killer whales. So if you're interested, one of the biggest things that my supervisor taught me was to think about your study question. I actually always wanted to work on killer whales, but my supervisor, Professor Rob Harcourt, steered me in a really great direction. He said, well, why do you want to work on them? There are other animals that are incredibly in need of our help, like the southern right whale, where their population has not recovered post-whaling, and they're vulnerable to some of the threats that we've talked about, ship strike, entanglement and fishing gear. The North Atlantic right whale, their recovery is literally limited by human activity. It's really sad. So a loss of a southern right whale or a North Atlantic right whale is a loss at a population level. It's a horrible thing. So I would say, yes, have that passion. You can become a whale scientist, but when you grow up, you need to talk to me and we need to work out what animals are really in need of help. For example, you may not have heard, but there is an animal called the vaquita porpoise. The vaquita porpoise, where there's less than 10 or so, there might be 11 or so in the world left, the world's most endangered marine mammal. They live in the Gulf of California. The vaquita porpoise, go Google and come back to me with some questions.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Our next question is Gemma Daly, also Director of the Press Club.
Thanks so much for your speech. Inspiring, particularly for girls coming
Thank you.
through school. The government's expected to announce its emissions targets in the next 24, 48 hours. I'm wondering, with your scientific background knowledge in terms of what's going on in the oceans, particularly where you think they should be.
Oh, good question.
And secondly, it's a challenging little environment and world you live in. I'm wondering, how do you stay so positive?
Yeah, it's kind of nuts, right? Every time I see a whale, I'm like, oh my God, this is so amazing. And I think it's because I'm a massive whale nerd. I love them. I love seeing these creatures. And I think that is what drives me forward, regardless of a full-time academic position. But not everyone is like that, as I said. And it's just the natural curiosity. Sometimes I can't even explain it. Now, so as a scientist, I know where I should speak and where I shouldn't speak. I'm not going to stand before you in Australia and say, oh yes, it should be here, because I don't know. But what I do know is the animals that I study are incredibly a great study species, the humpback whale in particular, because they are reflective of the changes that are going on in response to climate change. For example, a humpback whale migrates to the tropics, like Queensland, the Kimberley, to have their calves, and then they'll use that time to go back and invest in feeding over the summer. They're called capital breeders. So Antarctica, and this is I'm really grateful you asked this question, because some people don't really understand climate change, and so I always use the whales as a great example. Humpback whales will feed on an animal primarily called krill. They live in the Southern Ocean. These animals are reliant on Antarctic sea ice for a component of their lives, but more generally, with warming of our Earth, we're losing sea ice, which means we're losing habitat for krill, which means recovering whale populations will be vulnerable to that because krill are what we call a keystone species. In Antarctica, or in the world, that's an animal that is incredibly important to the functioning of an ecosystem. So I would say that I will be watching on with really great detail because what will be announced. And I also have to say, Australia, we have some of the best protection for whales and dolphins in the marine environment in the world. We do need to give ourselves a bit of a pat on the back because obviously a lot of the time the government's hearing negative things, but we are pretty good. We always can do better. So when you hear the numbers and discussion about this come out in the next 24, 48 hours, I want every single one of you to be aware and across that so that we can digest that information and be more savvy when it comes to understanding where Australia's put us in that position. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Our next question is from Anna Maria Arabia from the Australian Academy of Science.
Hi Vanessa, thanks so much for your presentation. It was inspiring. It's lovely to see you. Thank you for doing some myth busting and outlining the positives of research, that we're not alone in laboratories with a white lab coat looking down at a microscope, possibly with a pipette in hand. So they do exist. It's just not the entire science community. That it's an international endeavour,
yes.
One of the most exciting international careers, that communication's absolutely essential to take society with us, otherwise known as voters. That hard work is there, but it's rewarding, that science is so ubiquitous that sometimes we take it for granted. We can't see it and it's critical to our everyday, and that children were born curious. You also pointed out a couple of negatives, especially in relation to early career researchers. The short funding cycles mean that job insecurity is real, and so it's hard to retain the wonderful talent we have in Australia and make good of the investment made in those individuals to get to early career research stage and beyond. So with that context, in this room you have one of the panel members of the Strategic Examination of R&D, Professor Ian Chubb. Aside from being one of the panel members, and so his ears are pricked up and looking for recommendations, he's also very committed to the next generation being better off than the current one we have, and us being able to hand over a better world to them. With that, what would your words be to Professor Chubb and to the Strategic Examination for R&D? What are the recommendations read to improve circumstances and the future of early career researchers?
Thank you so much. And also I look up to you. You're a fabulous woman that I aspire to, so thank you. I would, first of all, like to say thank you for being here. And people might go, oh, that's ridiculous. No, really, I'm from the bottom of my heart, thank you for being here, because it's important that you're in this room because we look up to you, but also you have the ability to do things for us. And I'm now early career researcher, kind of getting beyond that stage. I would say that the first thing, well, you're doing the first thing. You're listening to us. And it might seem very fluffy, but it's not. You are here listening to a real world Australian scientist who's navigating this system right now. And it has been a struggle. And it's not, I'm not finger pointing. Everyone wants everyone to be happy. Everyone wants everyone to be wealthy and to have a secure job. But we want to buy a house. We want to have our children go to the really good schools. We need to work together, and this might sound old school, but round tables, having a discussion, bringing in, now that I've started and had the catalyst on this stage to represent this part of the world and the environment and the scientific world, this is our opportunity now to maybe highlight what other people, because I'm only speaking on behalf of myself, which, as I said earlier in my talk, was just one example of someone going through this. So it would be it's pretty silly for me to say this is exactly what you need to do, but right now I would say I need to be with a collective group so we have more broad scale representation to help inform what it is you need to do. And to have the opportunity to do that beyond this very stage is incredibly important, and I'd welcome that. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question is from, Brianna Hooby from Darramarlin College.
Hi, thank you for your talk. My question isn't quite so deep, but as a Year 12 student starting to go into uni and life beyond high school, do you have any advice for people looking to follow similar career paths and go into marine science and similar?
Oh, well, I wore your uniform. I'm an ex-Darramarlin student, so this is quite bizarre to have a Year 12 Darramarlin student speaking to me and asking this. Look, what I would say is that you just need to follow what you feel in here. And that's really important because that is driven to exactly why I'm here on this stage. You will face challenges, but that is where we grow. From every setback, we grow and we move forward. There'll be highs, there'll be lows, and the path to getting to where you want to go to is not like that. Remember? It's like this, this, and this. You must take breaks and you must surround yourself with good people who help lift you up. Because at the end of the day, you're very lucky at year 12 to be completely selfish and doing the things you love before you have children, and that's a good thing to do. So listen to your teachers and really go for it. Just grab your degree by the reins and just go for it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
And our next question, is this the final question probably, is Molly Taylor from St Mary MacKillop College?
Yes, thank you so much for presenting today. And so I'm passionate about science and communication and all of that. And I would like to know how your Wild Sydney Harbour project helps communities connect and communicate with the local marine wildlife.
Oh, you've done your homework. Yeah, so I run Wild Sydney Harbour, which is a citizen science project exactly designed to connect community with Blue Backyard. And it's probably taken a Canberran to live into Sydney because I've gone, wow, there's whales. I was babysitting a whale the other day. It was a first seal of the Opera House, who we call Pavarotti. I mean, come on, that's a cool name. But it's a really great opportunity to make sure that people are connected with what's around them, and working with the Gamay Rangers, like my mentee April in the room who represents the Gamay Rangers, it's an opportunity for us to bring in the cultural perspective and acknowledgement of just how important these animals are to some people in society, which is incredibly important. But it's, again, that opportunity for me to get business people who are going on the ferry to work going, oh yeah, that's a whale, pretty cool. There's a whale in your backyard. That's amazing. And if I was to say, and this is for the last question as well, if you are wanting to go into something that you're particularly interested in, like marine biology, you've just got to remember that sometimes studying marine biology looks different. And so remember, I went to ANU, a buffet of science, and then you specialise as you go on. So thank you.
Thank you.
And social media is incredibly important, but it's to be used with a grain of salt. There are other avenues out there. So connecting with scientists, and if you would like to get into science communication, you're actually on your way, because I've spent many years communicating science, and I would say that I was really bad before, and I've still got a lot more to work on, but this is an example of communicating science, and just like you, this is my first time here as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so lastly, Tonga. Let's go back to Tonga.
Tonga, yes.
So does the protection of whales, so, you know, the kind of top of or the largest in the ecosystem, help assist in the protection of the broader biodiversity of an entire, you know, ecosystem, including the tiny fish that no one really cares about?
Yes, so humpback whales, or whales in general, are incredibly important. Remember, whales go where they want when. They don't recognise international borders. So sometimes we have humpback whales, they will go across the Dutch to New Zealand. And then we know with Migaloo, the white whale, he has been 35 days later seen in Australia. So whales will feed in one area, poo in another. They move nutrients around the ocean, which is incredibly important for that caviar that you're probably going to eat, or prawns. And the fact that these animals also transit between Australia and our Pacific partners, like the Kingdom of Tonga, and all the South Pacific, is incredibly important, because these animals, they connect us. So we can go wherever we are, Fiji, the Kingdom of Tonga and Vava'u, these areas, people travel places to see whales. And the economists in the room, whales and wildlife are incredibly economically valuable. So people will pay lots of money to see them. It's important we protect them. So it is these animals are just one of many that do fundamental, incredibly important things in the ocean. And obviously I'm biased, but there's a lot of things we don't see in the ocean, but it takes an animal like a humpback whale, which may serve as a flagship species for some, to really connect. And hopefully it's done it today.
And just lastly, marine parks. So there is a United Nations pledge to increase to 30% the amount of ocean and land that is devoted, you know, given back to nature. How important are marine parks?
Marine parks enable the ocean to thrive in ways that hopefully it could thrive without us. Now, unfortunately, some of our actions in the ocean it doesn't just stop here with a line, because acoustic pollution can go beyond marine parks. Fishing gear can drift beyond a marine park, into a marine park rather. So Anywhere that we have the option to protect something, why not? Why not? And why not we use science to see how good of a job it can do?
Okay, before we thank our wonderful guest, Vanessa Pirotta, I would like to present her with a VIP pass to the National Press Club so she can come back anytime she likes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.